Humanity's warfleet enters the void. The enemy vanishes in seconds. The void stretched endless and dark, cold stars blinking like distant eyes. It was quiet, too quiet. Then the silence broke, not with sound, but with movement. The Imperial Armada waited across the black, a wall of silver and light, proud and unshaken. Thousands of warships hovered in perfect formation. Shields shimmered. Cannons glowed faintly. To the alien commanders it looked beautiful, like order made real. They had crushed 100 worlds before. To them this was routine. Humanity was just another defiant species shouting about freedom before being turned to dust. The Imperium had seen it all. Stronger races, older empires. None had survived. The admiral smiled. This battle would be no different. "Report," said the Supreme Commander, his voice calm and sharp. "Enemy fleet detected at long range," replied a sensor officer. "Humans, old models, outdated design." That made the bridge echo with low laughter. Humans. The noisy, reckless creatures who rose too fast. They built ships that looked like museum relics, metal beasts from a forgotten age. "Pathetic," the commander muttered. "Their courage ends today." But then something odd flickered across the readings. "Sir, the scans aren't stable." "Define unstable," the commander replied, his smile fading. "Energy readings off the charts." "It's not a shield, not exactly. The numbers, they don't make sense." For the first time, the technicians looked afraid. Their screens glowed red and then went blank. Every scanner burned out at once. The bridge lights dimmed. What did they do? "No idea, sir. The systems can't process it. It's like the readings broke the sensors." A moment of silence filled the command deck. Then, as if nothing happened, the commander straightened. "Ignore it. They are humans. Primitive and loud. Ready all weapons." The order spread through the fleet like fire. Plasma batteries armed. Ion turrets rotated into position. Giant capital ships moved into attack lines that stretched across the stars. The Imperium had turned the battlefield into a killing field, a trap waiting to close. And then they appeared. At first, only shadows. Shapes emerging from the dark edge of space, dozens of them. Then hundreds. Black iron ships, silent and cold, sliding forward like blades through the dark. No lights, no color, no signal transmission. Only motion, steady, perfect, unbroken. They were nothing like the bright, polished ships of the Imperium. These human vessels were raw steel in purpose. Every curve looked built for war. Every inch whispered death. Inside the Imperial command ship, tension began to rise. "Why aren't they sending a message?" an officer asked quietly. "Because they know how this ends," another replied, trying to sound brave, but his voice shook. Still, the humans said nothing. No words, no threats, no banners, just silence. The fleet kept moving straight toward the Imperial line. "They're not slowing down," a lieutenant reported. "They will," said the commander, forcing confidence. "No one walks into an Imperial wall." But deep down, a strange unease crept through his chest. The human ships were not acting like any fleet he'd seen before. Their formation was perfect, too perfect. Every movement mirrored across the line as if one mind controlled them all. The commander clenched his claws. "Prepare to fire." But before he could finish, the human fleet stopped. Every ship froze in unison. Engines dimmed. Weapons stayed silent. The entire battlefield went still. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. Even the stars seemed to hold their light. Then a single human ship detached from the formation. It drifted forward, slow and deliberate. Its armor was thick, scarred, ancient. But something about it made the Imperium uneasy. Power shimmered faintly around it like a storm waiting behind glass. "Sir, why are they not firing?" someone asked. The commander didn't answer. His eyes were locked on that one ship. It wasn't approaching fast. It didn't need to. It just existed. And that was enough to make every officer feel smaller. Inside the Terran flagship, the human commander stood silent. His face was calm. No fear, no arrogance. His crew waited, eyes focused on their consoles, hands ready. They didn't speak either. They didn't need to. They all knew what this moment meant. Across the void, the Imperium watched. 100 weapons charged. Plasma veins glowed blue. The silence stretched until it felt like a physical weight pressing on every chest. And then, one word left the human comms. A single sharp sound carried through the void like thunder. "Engage." The Imperium fleet shivered. And for the first time in their history, The conquerors felt fear. The word echoed through the void. Engage. No roar, no rallying cry. Just a calm, steady command that rolled across every Terran ship like thunder beneath still water. The Imperial commander felt his throat tighten. For the first time in centuries of conquest, he didn't know if he was the hunter anymore. Fire, he shouted. The order exploded through the fleet. 1,000 plasma cannons charged in unison, filling the darkness with rivers of blue fire. Missiles cut across space like falling stars. Energy beams screamed toward the black human ships, turning night into day. The Imperium roared with confidence. The battlefield burned bright with their fury. For a few seconds, it looked like victory. Then the light hit and vanished. Every plasma burst, every missile, every beam of energy disappeared the moment it touched the humans' invisible barrier. No explosions, no debris, nothing. The firepower of an empire had simply dissolved. On the Imperial flagship, officers froze. Confirm hits. The commander barked, "Confirmed, sir." But what? No impact, no damage. Their shields didn't even flicker. The commander stared at the display. His screens showed blank readings as if the human ships didn't exist. The sensors tried to map them but failed again and again. Error messages filled every terminal. "They are mocking us," someone whispered. "Fire again." The commander yelled. "All weapons. Everything we have." More beams. More explosions. The void turned white with heat. But once again, nothing. It was as if the humans were surrounded by a curtain that swallowed every attack whole. And through that curtain they began to move. The Terran ships advanced, silent and cold. No flashes. No signals. Their formations stayed tight, every ship turning and accelerating at the same exact second. It was terrifying precision. It looked less like a fleet and more like a single creature. Inside the alien ships, officers shouted over one another. "Why can't the scanners lock on?" "They're using stealth, sir." "No, it's more than stealth." The readings, they bend around them. "Impossible," the commander hissed, but his voice shook. He had fought hundreds of wars, but never had his instincts screamed this loud. Something was wrong. Across the stars, the humans kept coming. The silence between each movement felt heavier than cannon fire. Their ships glided like shadows through the remains of the plasma storms. The alien fleet's confidence cracked. They began to retreat ever so slightly, pulling their formation back a few kilometers, just enough to feel safer. But safety didn't exist here. Then one Terran ship broke from the line. Its armor glinted faintly in the reflected light of dying plasma. The vessel was old, ancient even, but its engines burned with a strange, controlled fury. A low hum spread across the battlefield, deep and steady like the growl of something enormous waking up. "Target that ship," the commander ordered. "Destroy it." Every cannon on the front line focused on the lone Terran vessel. The sky lit up again. Fire, light, chaos. When the glare faded, the human ship was still there, untouched. Inside that ship, a voice spoke quietly. "Weapons ready." And for the first time, humanity fired back. There was no light, no sound, just a flash and a disappearance. The Imperial dreadnought at the front vanished. It didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It simply ceased to exist. One moment, it filled a quarter of the screen. The next, it was gone, leaving a silent patch of empty space where it used to be. Every alien officer on the command bridge froze. What just happened? Did they teleport it? "No," said a trembling technician. "They erased it." The commander couldn't speak. His mind rejected what his eyes showed him. One ship traced an entire dreadnought. Then another human ship fired. Another disappearance. Then another. Each Terran shot carved a hole in the stars, erasing ships faster than the Imperium could react. Panic started to bloom across the alien lines. Some captains tried to change formation. Others opened fire blindly into the dark, hitting nothing but the void. But the humans didn't rush. They didn't chase. They advanced with the patience of predators who knew the kill was certain. Every shot was clean, deliberate, silent. The Imperial commander's hands trembled. How are they doing this?" No one answered. The bridge was filled with the sound of dying signals and static. Looked around and saw the fear in his officers' faces. The same fear he used to see in conquered enemies. "This can't be happening," he whispered. But it was, across the field. More Imperial ships disappeared into nothing. The formation shattered. The war zone filled with wreckage and screams, and still the Terran fleet moved forward. No cheers, no shouts, no emotion, just the soundless rhythm of iron and inevitability. The void was no longer silent. It was screaming. Every Imperial ship that vanished left behind an echo of panic. Across the command network, voices overlapped, officers begging for orders, soldiers shouting over static, scanners flooding with errors. The battlefield, once a perfect wall of firepower, was turning into chaos. But the humans didn't chase that chaos. They shaped it. Their fleet moved in perfect rhythm, lines breaking and reforming as if each ship already knew where the others would go. No spoken commands, no visible signals. They operated like one organism with a single purpose: erase the enemy. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, the Supreme Commander's claws dug into the metal armrest. "Focus your fire. All batteries, center formation. Overwhelm them with numbers." But even as he shouted, part of him knew numbers meant nothing now. He could feel it. The balance of power had already shifted. The human fleet didn't speed up. It didn't need to. The slow, steady advance was far more terrifying. Every time a Terran ship fired, an Imperial warship vanished. Not exploded, vanished. In seconds, entire squadrons were gone, leaving black voids where life once burned. A junior officer screamed, "They're not destroying us. They're erasing us." The word spread through the ship like poison. Erased, not killed, not defeated, erased. In the lower decks, soldiers who once stood proudly now gripped their weapons with trembling hands. They weren't soldiers anymore, they were prey. The commander turned to his science officer. "What weapon is that? How are they doing it?" The officer shook his head, eyes wide. "It's beyond plasma or energy fields." The reading suggests a tear, like they're bending the space around our ships until it collapses. "That's impossible," the commander hissed. "Yes, sir," the officer whispered. "But it's happening." A new wave of human ships opened fire. This time there was no visible beam, only the distortion of light, space rippling like liquid before returning to stillness. When it cleared, a dozen Imperial ships were gone, gone without trace. The battlefield, once lit by the Empire's power, grew darker. The stars themselves seemed to fade behind the Terran advance. Inside one of the surviving alien ships, the crew panicked. "We can't target them," someone yelled. "Our locks keep slipping. Our weapons won't charge." "Keep firing!" Their captain roared, but the crew didn't listen. Fear had taken command now. They watched as their sister ship beside them folded in half, vanishing like a ghost swallowed by night. On the Terran flagship, the human commander stood unmoving. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. No one celebrated. No one smiled. Every officer carried the same calm expression, the look of people who had seen war too many times to find beauty in it. A young ensign broke the silence. "Targets collapsing, sir. Enemy formation breaking. Maintain course," the commander said. His voice was low, steady. "No pursuit. Erase with precision." "Yes, sir." Outside, the Black Fleet spread its wings. The humans were cutting through the heart of the Imperial line now. One ship, then 5, then 20, all erasing enemy vessels with terrifying control. The Empire's finest soldiers watched their power disintegrate. Their shields failed. Their systems died. Their courage cracked. In a desperate move, a squadron tried to flank the humans. They circled wide, charging weapons, engines burning at full power. The commander of that group screamed into his comm, "For the Empire. For the stars." He never finished the sentence. The entire squadron blinked out of existence mid-sentence, silenced before their words reached anyone. On the Imperial flagship, one officer's voice broke into a sob. "Sir, we can't fight this. They're not a fleet. They're death itself." The commander slammed his fist on the console. "We are the Imperium. We do not run." But his words carried no weight. Even he could see the truth reflected on the cracked screen before him. Row after row of human ships advancing through the ruins of what had been his armada. He turned toward the viewing window. The sight froze him. The Terran fleet looked monstrous now, black shapes surrounded by faint halos of distortion. Each one seemed to tear at the fabric of the universe simply by existing. The closer they came, the more reality itself seemed to bend. The commander whispered, They are rewriting the laws of war. Then the Terran flagship fired again. The pulse rolled outward like a ripple across a pond. The Imperial fleet's center vanished. Thousands of lives blinked out in a heartbeat. The commander's voice trembled for the first time in his career. Signal all ships. Retreat. But before the order could travel, half of his communication relays were gone. Cut off, erased. He stared at the dying screens. Static filled the bridge. The silence returned, but it was no longer peaceful. It was the silence of finality. For centuries, the Imperium had ruled as gods among stars. Now those gods were watching their empire dissolve before their eyes. And as the humans advanced through the smoke and ruin, their ships shining like obsidian blades in the dark, one truth settled into the heart of every surviving alien. This was not war. This was judgment. The Imperial fleet was breaking apart. Across the void, ships spun helplessly through the dark. Their engines dead, their formations shattered. The once mighty wall of the Imperium now looked like scattered shards of glass floating in an endless ocean. Every channel was filled with chaos. Reform the line, one captain shouted. We've lost guidance control, another cried. Where are the reinforcements? Static answered them all. Inside the command bridge of the Imperial flagship, the Supreme Commander stood surrounded by the flicker of dying screens. His claws trembled as he watched his empire crumble before his eyes. What are they? He whispered, voice breaking. How can a single species— Sir, his communications officer interrupted, panic in his voice. We're receiving distress calls from every quadrant. They're begging for orders. Tell them to fight, the commander roared, slamming a fist onto the console. Tell them the Empire never surrenders. But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. The Empire was surrendering already, piece by piece, breath by breath. Out there in the darkness, the human fleet continued its silent advance. They did not speak. They did not taunt. They did not gloat. Their silence was colder than death. It was the silence of inevitability. Each time a Terran ship fired, an Imperial vessel disappeared. The space it once occupied shimmered and then turned to nothing. No explosion. No debris, no trace. Just a hole in the universe where life used to be. On one of the smaller alien cruisers, the crew tried to fight back. They rerouted every weapon, overcharged every plasma cannon, and fired everything they had. The void flashed bright for a moment, and then the cruiser itself vanished. Gone in its own light, the humans didn't even slow down. Inside the Terran flagship, the commander stood still, hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the holo display. Around him, his crew worked with perfect precision. No one spoke unless necessary. There were no cheers, no emotion, only discipline. Enemy formations collapsing, reported a navigation officer calmly. Proceed to Phase 2, the commander replied. Phase 2. Those two words carried more power than 1,000 alien warships. At once, the human fleet began to spread out. Their formation widened, their flanks curving around the edges of the battlefield. It was a maneuver so sharp, so calculated, that it looked choreographed. Within minutes, the humans had surrounded the remaining Imperial ships. The Predators had closed the circle. Sir, a terrified Imperial officer whispered. They've encircled us. The commander glared at him. Then break through. Fire everything! But when they fired, the result was the same. Plasma storms vanished. Ion bursts dissolved. Missiles evaporated before reaching their targets. The humans' strange shields devoured it all. A new sound filled the bridge, something the commander had never heard in all his years of war. It was quiet at first, a small tremor, then louder. The sound of panic. Soldiers were abandoning their posts. Technicians were praying under their breath. This is no longer a battle, the science officer said quietly. It's execution, the commander froze. The word hit him harder than any weapon. Execution, that was exactly what it was. The humans weren't fighting, they were cleansing. He turned his gaze back to the void. The human ships glided forward through clouds of glowing debris. Pieces of Imperial hull drifted like ashes around them. Flames burned blue and red, reflected on their black armor. Do you see it? Whispered the communications officer. They don't celebrate. They don't rage, they just erase. The commander swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. Because to them, he muttered, this isn't war. It's work. And still the Terrans came. One alien captain tried to flee. His ship spun hard to starboard, engine screaming. We're retreating. We have to warn the Empire. He didn't make it a full kilometer before his ship disappeared into the void, swallowed by a ripple of energy that bent light itself. On the bridge of the flagship, an ensign collapsed to his knees. "We're doomed," he whispered. The commander ignored him. He couldn't afford fear, not yet. He turned to his tactical officer. "Open a direct line to all surviving ships." The officer hesitated. "Sir, there may not be many left. Do it." The screen flickered to life. A dozen faces appeared, some captains, some generals. Their expressions were broken, desperate. "This is the Supreme Commander," he began, forcing authority into his shaking voice. "Hold your positions. Protect what's left of the fleet. If we die with honor." But the word honor felt hollow. No one answered. They just stared, eyes wide, silent, hopeless. One by one, their feeds went dark as their ships vanished. The commander's words faltered. This cannot be real." But it was. Through the thickening darkness, the Terran fleet closed in, their hulls glinting like the edges of knives. The last of the Imperial guns fell silent. There was nothing left to fire, nothing left to command. And as the humans drew closer, their engines casting faint halos of blue light, the commander felt something he had never felt before. He had conquered worlds. He had ruled galaxies. But in that final moment, as the black ship surrounded his flagship, he finally understood the feeling his enemies must have known in their last breath. Helplessness. He closed his eyes. The hum of Terran energy filled the air like a heartbeat. Then the stars went dark. The first ships broke and ran. Engines flared white. Hulls shook. Captains shouted new courses over broken comms. Anything to escape the ring of black ships closing in. The battlefield turned into a storm of desperate motion. Vessels cut across each other's paths. Pilots screamed warnings. 2 frigates clipped fins and spun away, trailing sparks into the dark. "Retreat vector plotted," an alien navigator cried. "We can still make the rim!" They tried. The human fleet did not chase like hunters who smell blood. They moved like gates. No rush, no noise, just perfect lines sliding into place. An exit lane opened for a heartbeat, and closed as a Terran wing drifted across it with eerie calm. Their speed. How are they already there? A captain asked, voice cracking. "They aren't fast," his first officer whispered. "They're early." More ships peeled away from the shattered center. Small craft dove between wrecks, hoping the debris would hide them. Capital vessels throttled to maximum, shields burning hot. Engines wailed like wounded animals. The Imperial network filled with one repeated plea. Any corridor, any gap. Any hope. The gap never came. The Terrans split their formation with surgical grace. Columns glided apart, curved and rejoined, writing invisible geometry across the stars. Every turn from the Imperium led into a line of black iron. Every escape was a pocket. Every pocket collapsed. A cruiser fired a last burst of plasma to clear its path. The light hit the human veil and went out like a breath on glass. The cruiser plunged ahead anyway, crew praying to distant gods, then space rippled. No blast. No flame. The cruiser stretched like a reflection in water and slid out of existence. Its wake closed behind it with a gentle shiver, as if the universe itself exhaled. On a damaged carrier, the captain stared at the empty place where his ally had been. "Record," he said softly. "Sir?" "Record and transmit to all bands." The comm officer swallowed. "Recording." The captain looked into the lens with tired eyes. "To any Imperial ship, to any world that still listens. We misjudged the humans. They are not loud. They are not weak. They are final." He paused. "If you seek them, you end." The message flashed across the net, bouncing off relays that were dying by the second. Then a shadow fell over the carrier. A Terran destroyer drifted past like a knife. Space folded once. The carrier was gone. The message kept traveling. The Supreme Commander's flagship still floated, wounded but intact, at the edge of the slaughter. Around him, officers worked with shaking hands. "Find a hole," he ordered. "I do not care where it leads." "Sir," the navigator said, eyes wet, "the holes are not ours. They open where the humans want them," he almost shouted. He did not. The truth was clear. This was not a sky you flew through. This was a maze someone else was drawing in real time. Across the void, 3 Imperial destroyers formed on each other's flanks. Their captains spoke only once. Names, family, a promise to meet again. They turned as one and dove for deep space. The Terrans let them run for 10 full seconds. Hope rose like a spark. Then 3 human ships rotated together. Rings of faint light rippled outward. For a moment it looked like nothing. Then the fleeing destroyers simply shortened. Compressed to a line, then to a point, then to memory. Silence reclaimed the channel. Inside a small patrol corvette, a young pilot gripped the yoke. His commander was dead. Half his crew were gone. He switched to a private channel and spoke to no one. "I don't want to die afraid," he whispered. He turned his nose toward the nearest human ship and advanced at full power. The Terran vessel did not fire. The corvette came closer. Hull plates groaned. Lights flickered. He imagined he saw a figure behind the black glass of the enemy bridge. Calm, patient, already done with him. He shut his eyes. Space folded. When he opened them, there was only quiet. Back on the Imperial flagship, the Supreme Commander stood straighter. Fear had burned down to a hard coal. He faced the main display and spoke to his crew. "We will not win," he said, plain and steady. "But we will choose our last act. Lock trajectories on the closest human capital ship. Prepare a ramming profile." A murmur of shock. Then hands moved. Keys clicked. For a moment the bridge found shape again. Purpose did not erase doom, but it steadied the breath. The flagship accelerated. The Terran line appeared to part, making room. A trick, the commander thought. He drove harder. "Impact in 20, someone called. 15. 10. The stars flexed. The flagship did not strike steel. It slid into a bright hush like falling into light snow. Every alarm stopped. Every dial settled on 0. For a heartbeat, they were nowhere. They were gone. Across the field, the last organized cluster of Imperial vessels fired everything they had left. It was not a tactic. It was a ritual. The void bloomed with wasted fury and then went black. The human fleet finally changed tempo. Not faster, not louder, just closer. They stepped in, ship by ship, and erased the stragglers with the same cold mercy they had shown since the first shot. On a distant moon, an Imperial relay caught the dying captain's message and sent it on. Worlds far from the warfront paused. Priests went silent. Ministers locked their doors. Children stopped asking questions. The words sank in like winter. Humans are final. When the last alien engines fell quiet, the Terran formation held position. Not a single ship had left rank. Not a single voice had cheered. The horizon itself seemed to lean toward them, as if pulled by their gravity. The chase was over. The lesson was not. In the quiet that followed, wreckage drifted like ash from a dead fire. Somewhere in that slow snow, a shattered beacon blinked its final code. No one answered. The humans did not move to collect trophies. They did not carve marks into hulls. They let the dark accept what it had taken. Then their engines glowed low and even like the breath of a sleeping giant. The horizon followed them as they turned, and every survivor, hiding in shadows or clinging to ruptured air, understood the new shape of the galaxy. Where humans walked, escape was a word without meaning. Silence fell over the ruins of the battlefield. The stars that had once glowed bright now seemed distant, dim, afraid. The black human fleet drifted among the wreckage like shadows that refused to fade. The Empire's greatest armada, its pride, its power, was gone. Only fragments remained, and even those were dying. On the shattered edge of the war zone, a few Imperial ships still floated, burning, broken, but alive. Their crews whispered prayers, afraid to speak too loud, as if sound itself might draw the humans closer. Inside the flagship of what was left of the Empire's command, the Supreme Commander stood frozen before the viewing glass. The reflection staring back at him was not the proud leader who had begun this war. His armor was cracked. His eyes were empty. His voice, once sharp as steel, trembled like old glass. "Status report," he said quietly. No one answered. "Status," he shouted, slamming his claw against the console. A single officer turned, her voice hollow. "No ships responding, sir. Long-range comms are gone. We've lost contact with the outer colonies. The network's collapsing." The commander closed his eyes. The weight of centuries pressed on his shoulders. The Imperium, the eternal conqueror, had become dust in less than an hour. Across the field, the human ships hovered motionless. They didn't pursue. They didn't need to. They were waiting. The commander looked up at the stars. "Why?" he whispered. "Why won't they finish it?" On the Terran flagship, the answer was being prepared. The human commander stood in the center of the bridge. His face was calm, his eyes unreadable. Around him, officers worked silently. None smiled. None cheered. They had seen the cost of war too many times to celebrate it. "Open transmission," the commander said. The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir. All frequencies." Across the void, lights flickered on broken Imperial ships as their systems reconnected for one final time. Across far-off worlds, leaders froze mid-sentence as their screens came alive. Across colonies and home planets, civilians looked up at the sky as a human face filled the stars. The commander spoke. His voice was deep, steady, without hate. "This message is for the Imperium, and for all who would follow their path." He paused. Every word seemed to vibrate through the void. Humanity does not seek conquest. Humanity does not seek war. But if you bring war to us... He leaned slightly forward, his eyes sharp as the black holes behind him. "You will not survive it." His tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. The quiet power in his voice struck deeper than any weapon. "Withdraw. Remember this day. Remember what you saw here. Because if you ever return, if you ever threaten Earth again, this will not be a battle." He paused one last time. "It will be the end." The message ended. For several long seconds, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the humans began to move. Their ships turned in perfect unison, no words exchanged. One by one, they aligned and accelerated, fading into the dark. No victory chants. No symbols raised. Just silence and departure. On the Imperial flagship, the commander sank into his chair. The echo of that human voice still rang in his mind. His officers stood in stunned silence. "No one dared speak, sir," one of them whispered. "Should we respond?" He shook his head slowly. "No, there's nothing left to say." Across the scattered Imperial territories, the transmission replayed again and again. Admirals wept in disbelief. Generals smashed their consoles. Civilians fell to their knees as the same realization spread through the stars. The humans hadn't even shown their full strength. If this was just their defense, what would their wrath look like? News traveled faster than light. Every surviving captain, every surviving soldier repeated the words. They warned us once. In the quiet halls of the Imperial capital, leaders gathered in panic. Holograms flickered over a long obsidian table as reports poured in. The fleet is gone. Entire sectors are dark. The humans? They didn't chase us. The Empress herself stood before the great viewing window, staring into the void. "So they choose mercy," she said softly. "Mercy?" One of her advisors scoffed, trembling. "They could have wiped out our empire in minutes." The Empress turned her eyes on him. "And yet they didn't. That is not mercy. That is warning." Outside, in the emptiness between stars, the human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving only silence and the faint afterglow of erased worlds. Back aboard the last Imperial cruiser still broadcasting, a wounded officer clutched his chest, speaking into a cracked microphone. "Transmit this to every world," he rasped. "Tell them what we saw. Tell them," his voice failed. Blood drifted upward in the zero gravity. He forced one last whisper. "Humanity has risen, and they will not fall again." Then the signal died. The war was over, but the fear that would last forever. From that day forward, across every planet, every council hall and every shadowed spaceport, a whisper spread through the galaxy. Do not awaken humanity. Do not test them, because those who did no longer existed. The battlefield went quiet. Where 1,000 ships had burned, only shadows drifted now. Broken hulls turned slowly, catching weak starlight. Fire faded to cold embers. The screams were gone. The echoes were gone. Only the graveyard remained. The human fleet did not move at first. They held position in a perfect line. Black iron against black space. Not a single ship out of place. Not a single engine wasted. Their silence was heavier than any roar. Across the ruins, a few Imperial vessels still lived. Their lights flickered. Their air leaked. Their crews whispered prayers that had no gods to hear them. None dared speak to the humans. None dared break the new rule that filled the void. Do not awaken humanity. On the Terran flagship, the commander stood alone at the viewing pane. His reflection looked calm. Tired, perhaps. Not proud. Not cruel. He watched the ruins not as trophies but as a cost. Around him, the bridge worked with careful hands. No chatter, no cheer. Duty only. "Final sweep complete," said the tactical officer. "No hostile power left." Confirm losses, the commander said, a brief pause. None. He nodded once. Record. The comms officer lifted his eyes. Ready? The commander spoke in the same steady tone he had used for the warning. To any who still listen, we are departing the field. Recover your dead. Carry your wounded. Learn. Stay away from Earth. Stay away from ours. If you force our hand again, you will not return. He ended the message. No threats. No list of demands. The weight lived in what he did not say. Plot egress, he ordered. Course set. Navigation replied. Event horizon protocol. Minimal signature. Minimal time. The fleet turned as one. Engines breathed. Nothing rushed. Nothing stumbled. They slid toward the dark like knives into their sheaths. Far behind, the last Imperial survivors watched them go. Some reached out with broken transmitters, wanting to answer, to beg, to promise. None found words. The departure felt like judgment made real. It felt like a door closing on an age. In the Imperial capital, the Empress stood at her high window and stared into the lifeless sky. Around her, ministers argued in hoarse whispers. Some spoke of revenge. Some spoke of surrender. None spoke of pride. Pride had been erased with the fleet. Begin the role of the lost, she said. Her voice did not shake. Begin reforms. Begin silence. What of the humans? An advisor asked. She let the silence hang. We will remember them, she said at last. And we will not call. Rumor moved faster than ships. Spaceports hushed when Terran faces appeared on old screens. Pilots lowered their eyes when Earth was named. Smugglers whispered in shadowed bars. They did not fight, they said. They ended. Priests changed prayers. Soldiers changed songs. Mapmakers added a new line to their charts. A line with no border posts and no flags. Only a warning. On the far edge of the dead field, a rescue skiff slid from a cracked Imperial hull. 2 medics secured the last survivor they could find. He was burned. He was shaking. He opened his eyes once and rasped a single line. Tell them. The humans laughed, because they could. Then he slept and would not wake for days. The Terran fleet entered the black between stars. Hulls dimmed, weapons cooled, voices softened. On the flagship, a junior officer glanced at a sealed panel and hesitated. Sir, authorization to view final metrics? The commander did not look away from the window. View. The panel brightened. Numbers glowed pale on glass. Engagement power deployed. 2.7% shield array utilization. 11% fleet condition. Optimal. The bridge did not cheer. The numbers were not a boast. They were a reminder. The commander closed the display with a slow hand. Stand down to watch rotations, he said. Send condolences to families of allied worlds lost in prior raids. And send aid. Aid? The officer asked, surprised. Food, medicine, tools. Send warnings with them. Not threats. Warnings are enough. Aye, sir. The fleet folded in to jump. The stars bent and slid aside. The graveyard fell behind without a sound. In their wake, the galaxy adjusted. Councils rewrote laws. Warlords canceled campaigns. Merchant guilds changed routes to curve wide around a blue dot they had once mocked. New cadets learned a quiet saying on their first day. Speak low near Earth, step lightly near Earth, do not knock on Earth's door. Weeks passed. On a lonely relay beyond the rim, an old Imperial sensor picked up a faint signature. Something deep, something slow, something patient. It was not human. It was not Imperial. It moved like a shadow beneath ice. The relay recorded one frame before its lens cracked with age. Far away, in the command vault beneath the Terran flagship's bridge, a single light whispered across a dark console. An ancient watcher program woke, read the relay's dying pulse, and carried a message upward. The commander stepped into the vault. He read the silent alert. He stood very still. Sir? The aide asked, voice low. He answered without fear, without surprise. We ended a hunt, he said. But someone else set it running. Another empire? Maybe, he said. Maybe not an empire at all. The aide swallowed. Orders? The commander looked toward the distant line of home. His voice stayed calm. We warn once. We stand ready twice. And if we rise a third time... He let the thought end there. The aide nodded. He understood. Above them, the fleet held steady in the dark. No banners, no drums. Only ships, only people, only a promise made simple. Humanity does not seek war. But if you bring war to them, there will be no second lesson. The The stars listened, and the new law held.